Good day, everyone, and welcome to one of our final sessions of this 5th annual Triton Leaders Conference. This year's theme is allyship, and this session is around paving your allyship journey and the Triton Network. I'm pleased to be joined by Ping Ye, Kim Phillips-Bone, and Kelly Du as the panelists for this conversation. And I'm also pleased to have all of you here to be part of this conversation. And with that, I would turn it over to Alumni Board President, Dr. Kimberly Phillips-Bone.
Hello, I'm just going to remind us of the UC San Diego principles of community, providing fair treatment for faculty, staff, and students, encouraging a climate of fairness, cooperation, and professionalism, fostering inclusiveness, respect, and a welcoming environment, promoting collaborative attitudes and actions. And as Natalie Ehlers mentioned, Natalie is the Senior Executive Director of Alumni. I'm Kimberly Phillips-Bone. I go by Kim. My pronouns are he, she, her, and hers. I'm joined by Ping Ye, class of 99, and his 01, and Kelly Du, class of 12. You can see our various affiliations here. Over the next few minutes, we're each going to tell a little story about how we came to become allies or thinking of allies as part of our work. And then we're just going to begin a conversation amongst ourselves, a very short conversation, and then we'll open it up to conversations with all of you. I have to say, over the past few days, it's been an extraordinary experience of seeing just how many people are engaged in this work, who are trying to do more. And also the chats, I think, are indicative of the values that I just spoke about. I'm really loving the outpouring of support and passion that I've been reading in the chat. We've had extraordinary presentations, Tim Weiss yesterday, Helen Griffith. We've had poetry from some of our alums. All of that, I think, speaks to our deep commitment towards equity and allyship. I am now going to turn it over to Ping.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ping, and as I look back on the last couple days on the conference, I'm actually blown away by how important a role allyship has had in almost everything that I've been involved with, not only with UC San Diego, but also beyond after graduation. I did my BSMS, just a little background in engineering. I was part of the founding of DCAF, so if there are any students out there that got an internship through DCAF, which is a student-run career fair in the engineering school, which I've heard still, maybe pre-pandemic, still going on. And then beyond the campus, I founded a company as well, which would not have been possible without dozens, if not hundreds, of people in the community to help support that. And I can go into more details there. And then outside of my kind of down the middle career, I also have done nonprofits like the China AIDS Orphan.
Ping's audio break off, or is it just me?
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did. While we wait for him to come back, why don't we move along?
I think Ping is back. Ping, can you hear us? I love Sam's comment. Kim, should I go ahead and?
Why don't you pick up from there?
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so just a little bit about myself and my journey with allyship as it relates to being at UC San Diego is I really owe it to UC San Diego for understanding what it means to be an ally Specifically, I was with Thurgood Marshall College, and if anyone in the audience was part of Thurgood Marshall College, we had a writing course called Doc, Dimensions of Culture. And the first class that we all got maybe dumped into was about race, class, and sexuality. And coming from high school, not ever being exposed to these type of conversations, and then just having week after week conversations around these topics, and then staying up late nights to write essays about these topics, and having discussions with my classmates and the people that I was living with, 10 girls and everyone around us. It was uncomfortable, but in a learning type of way. And the whole thing about Thurgood Marshall College, and we are one UCSC community now, so even though I have warm ties towards TMC, it is all about the Triton family. But going back to it, it just taught me to be a scholar and citizen, which is what TMC is about. And I owe it to my experience with learning from the beginning, having uncomfortable conversations, that I could take that into the workplace now and, be part of difficult conversations, be part of mentorship opportunities, and then continue to learn. Because when Natalie first asked me to be part of this panel, I always get a little bit uncomfortable because, as an ally, there's no being the best ally or something. And I always feel like I'm in a position of learning, but I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this panel and be part of this discussion.
Back. Sorry about that.
Yay. Do you want to finish up, Ping?
Sure. I don't know where exactly I left off.
You were speaking about your work with an orphanage in China.
Yeah. So allyship's just been a part of, when I look back, almost every aspect of things that I've done. And in the late 90s, mid 90s, there was illegal blood selling of blood in China. And I can go into more details, but we founded a nonprofit to help thousands of orphans in central China that lost their parents to the AIDS virus and illegal blood selling. And that would not have been possible without the help without allyship. And so it's just such a powerful, concept that I'm really happy that we're here today to talk about it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kim Phillips-Bone. I think I might be the oldest person on the panel. I graduated in '82. And I mentioned that because when I came to UC San Diego, there were very few people who looked like me. And certainly there were, I think maybe it was my fourth year when I finally had a faculty of color. And so it was, I wouldn't argue that it was a lonely experience. My background was I was a military brat. So I had moved a lot. I was very used to being in environments where I might be the only. So I learned early on to take care of myself. And I was privileged to have a mother who was a teacher and who was my staunchest advocate, and a father who was fierce about his children getting educated. So when I came to UC San Diego, I knew I needed to get on with it. But I could not have made it through UC San Diego and moved on into a graduate program, when I finished at UC San Diego without the aid of allies. I was lucky to have two professors, Professor Thomas Dublin, who was in the history department, and Kathleen Berkeley, who had just graduated from UCLA, a young woman who came in and actually replaced him while he went off to do a sabbatical. And those two helped me understand how to be an ally. You go above and beyond, you hear someone's story, and you walk them through the steps to do more, not only get someplace, but how you teach them how to do that. Because part of what you want to do as an ally is to show someone how it works so that that person can go on and do the work herself. And that's exactly what they did. Tom sent 12 women of color into the Ivy Leagues. We all became professors. When I arrived at Yale, there were 6 other women that he had nurtured and mentored. And that was, and 6 others went on to Harvard, where he had been the year before. And that was very powerful for me to see someone who did not look like me, who was fierce. And I had the good fortune for over the next 20 years to spend time with him, because I became a historian too. That advocacy pushed me out of my comfort zone. When I arrived at Yale, one of the first things I did was help support labor union development at Yale, which is still, they just voted on a new contract. And that showed me that I could help someone too immediately. Over the past decade, I have been deeply engaged here in San Diego. San Diego is one of the second largest city in California, and 40% of the young people, of children here in San Diego, live in poverty. That is an extraordinary number. And many of them are undocumented, and many of them are recent immigrants, some undocumented. I learned from 2 people, one an alum and one who is an incredible friend of UC San Diego. The alum is Chris Yonoff. When he was an undergraduate here, he graduated in 2002, I believe. At the age of 20, he started a program called Reality Changers, and this nonprofit is still in existence. I met Chris in 2015. Chancellor Kosla told him to put me to work, and I did. I'm deeply committed to advancing and supporting first-generation students. I don't care what color they are. My support is for anybody who is a first-generation student. And that is my mission. And I learned how to shape a mission from a great friend of UC San Diego, Malin Burnham. Many of you might know Malin. Malin is now 95 years old, and Malin is still making trouble and doing the good fight. And what he has taught me, besides creating the mission statement, and the other is, this work is never done. You cannot rest on your laurels. Malin has done a lot. He's continued to do so. He has just supported the Malin Center for Civic Engagement that is now in the new UC San Diego building there on Market Street. I'm on the Community Advisory Board. So as a UC San Diego grad, I learned the very powerful platform that we all have with our degrees from UC San Diego. Over the next few minutes, Ping, Kelly, and I are just going to ask each other a series of questions, and you'll hear more of their stories as we go along. You'll see in the chat that we've put in some questions for you to consider too. We came up with these questions, mostly Ping, so thank you, Ping, because I think when you begin to interrogate yourself, you'll begin to be able to imagine yourself now as an ally. You may have already become one. So why don't we begin? Ping, I'm going to ask you, what is an ally?
There we go. For me, an ally is someone or a group of people that share a similar vision of the future. And I think, like, in looking back over the last couple of days, it could be a vision of you, of what you can become. It can be a group of people and a struggle and the oppression that need to be stood up for. And so I kind of the shared vision I kind of wrote a definition this morning as I was lying in bed thinking about this. I do that very often as I meditate on these kinds of topics. And I feel like for me, allyship is the action of intentionality and collectivity to create a better future with others, known or unknown to that person, which I learned yesterday, through a shared educational journey, because we're all learning in this process, to address a struggle of some kind. And I find, for me, just being able to write that down, tried to capture at least what I've been learning the last couple of days.
How about you, Kelly? What is an ally? What does that mean to you?
Yes, before I jump into even my definition of an ally, I do want to give an example of Ping being an ally and you as well, Kim. And just so that, because sometimes being an ally, you don't fully realize as you're doing it, and Ping, you've been doing it even before you're learning today. And I would say that, both of you, including me, on the opportunity and journey of being part of the board is like being an ally, because for me, I don't see myself as, young first generation graduate of UCSD as necessarily being fitting, but for you to spin things differently and want the voice of the board to be different and to be diverse like our population, I would say is, I would give you both credit to that point of doing the work of being an ally, amplifying the voice of those who don't usually have it, and thinking about how to create change in how we work together as UCSD, just to switch things up from how we used to do it. So with that, what is an ally for me is really thinking about your position of privilege and acknowledging what privileges you do have and taking that as an opportunity to amplify the voice of those around you who aren't necessarily as, in the position to have a voice, to realize that, like I said, when I talked about dimensions of culture, there's going to be a lot of learning. It's a lifelong journey of learning. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to be very open to learning. And also, like I had mentioned, there's no end point. There's no, this weekend we're having a conference about allyship and then we're done. It's how do you learn during this time and then bring it to, UCSD and our network, but also beyond in the work that we do beyond UCSD.
And maybe I could turn a little bit that question towards Kim. Maybe what I'm hoping in this session is to maybe get into the juicy details and the nitty gritty of how the process kind of happens. I feel like we have a lot of experiences in life. We talk about, oh, this happened, and that happened, and the UCSD statue, people fought, but you keep pushing it and we have a statue on campus. But like for you, Kim, like and there's so many different examples. What are some, how does that seed start? How does it begin? And maybe you can share some examples, Kim, different examples of how it just begins, the beginning processes that gets things going, if you will. I don't know, I hope that made a little sense there.
I think, and it's, we got a bit of that yesterday when we heard from Tim Weiss, and I really believed Helen Griffith, and I hope everyone has had the chance of hearing from Helen this morning. And both of them said something very similar, very important. Recognize your assets. Recognize that we all have privilege. We do. And we Kelly was mentioning, saying, hey, Kim, you and Ping, were an ally to me. And I think, Ping and I would both say, thank you, Kelly. And it's because someone else helped me do this too, helped me see that I could do something more than I could see myself. And so I think that we're to really interrogate. And I think that's why we put some of the questions into the chat. So scroll up, because you can ask yourself, have I ever taken on a struggle that is not my own? And somebody will say, okay, Kim, how come you're a very strong advocate for first generation students? And I have a privilege. I'm not a first generation student. I'm not even a second generation student. I'm a third generation student, because I'm a third generation Californian. And I had the privilege of being born to two Black parents who were born in the 30s, who were in California when Black people could actually get into colleges. And that's a whole other history that I'm not going to go into. Something happened in the 60s and 70s, but in the 50s, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was a Black pathway to college education. And so for me, seeing that we're still fighting the first generation struggle was something that I needed to take on. And so I think for me, and to see that this is an issue at UC San Diego, affordability, access, and it's not just getting there, it's helping people thrive there. And so for me, taking on a struggle, it's not just taking on a struggle of others, it's also understanding what's in it for me. And this isn't helping the unfortunate. Tim also said, be careful of your language. Don't talk about unfortunate, underprivileged, underrepresented. No. This is about my future. This is about the investment in people who are in my community. And so thinking through how you think about this is really critical as well. I'm hoping that helps Ping start to get into the nitty gritty here.
Yeah, I thank you, Kelly, for what you said earlier. As Kim just mentioned, we've all had mentors, and as the session yesterday mentioned, you're not going to have just one mentor, but you're going to have many. And I've had probably my fair share of dozens of people who've given guidance. And it's you look back and you're so grateful for it, and you just want to pass it forward. And we're happy to do that. And it was easy for you, Kelly, to bring you on board, because you're making huge changes, and you're exemplifying, the Triton spirit. And, when I first interviewed right for the board, what you do at your company, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit, actually, because you exemplify so many of what the Triton spirit is, which is, yeah, we get these majors, but there's this additional, I don't see it in other universities, but because I've interacted with a lot of, but there's this additional kind of ethos and passion for doing more than what your degree and what your role is in the company. Can you share a little bit with everybody on what you've done?
Yeah, so mentorship is a huge thing for me that I'm passionate about, because similar to both of you, I felt like even during high school and throughout college, there's this sense of imposter syndrome. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here, so I'm going to do it. So even going into the workforce, I'm not in finance anymore. I switched, but I'm still very analytical, and the field is very male dominated. So I tend to focus on, how do I find opportunities for other women who don't know what's going on behind the curtain. There's a lot of unspoken rules or things going on with how to transition around the company, with how to progress in the company, with how to network. And I found that, people typically gravitate to those who have similar backgrounds to them or who look similar to them. So for me, the whole focus on mentorship was really to try and find opportunities to break that, but also connect women similar to myself with people who were passionate also about mentorship and helping them to understand, like, navigating the matrix of the company, navigating their careers. And I find that at UCSD as well. I think we all are trying to spend more time with students and focus more on mentorship, especially with first generation students, there are a lot of unwritten rules that they are not familiar with. And there are like resources that they're not familiar with that can help them progress and actually graduate from UCSD. So, it continues to be a passion of mine. I recently switched over from Thermo Fisher to Dexcom, and one of the first things that I jumped into was, okay, how can I bring this platform of mentorship over to this other company? But then also, how can I bring it to UCSD as well with students? I know it's a big focus for us, and maybe I'll bounce this question to either Kim or Ping, but like, how have things transitions with how we're thinking about mentorship for students, and why has it become such an important focus for us? Because I don't think as a student, I didn't hear too much about mentorship, but I do sense it, that there has been a change in tides of us focusing more on it. Why has it become such a big focus? I know it is important, but I just wanted to open it up to both of you.
Kim, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I'll go first, but I'm going to quickly pass it off to you, Ping, because I think, you with starting a company and like probably have a lot to say about it. But I will say, like Kelly, nobody, there were no formal mentorship programs when I was here at UC San Diego. But certainly the idea of a guide, of finding a guide, finding someone to help navigate, finding somebody who's going to get in the boat and row with you. And I think Sam and I put that metaphor in the chat. So I'm hoping everybody's reading the chat so that you know that you're not alone in doing what you're doing. But I think the formal mentorship of program has really emerged because we're in a very fast-paced environment of learning and working. I think when I finished graduate program, I entered into a world where people had jobs for 40 years. That has changed. And I say this because I'm a historian of work. That's my research focus. And the dramatic change in technology, how we work, where we work, is really difficult to navigate. And having someone who can guide you, I think, is really critical for all students, especially for first generation students. I will also say, while I was a faculty member, I also moved on to become a dean and a provost. And one of the things we've learned through data, students flounder at the end of their second year of being in a university. I don't care, regardless of their class, race, gender, they tend to flounder. And so one of the things they need more than anything is someone to help them begin to think about navigating a career, building networks and the like. All of these skill sets are things that people need to start doing before they get out into the workplace. So mentorship is really critical here. It's especially critical if you come from environments where access to those networks are not available. So that is, and sometimes those networks having access to them, that's a privilege. That's a privilege. Ping, I think I'll turn it back to you on that.
Yeah, I think you asked about my experience in terms of founding a company. So just a little about the company I founded, Stemonics. It's a biotech company that makes unusual things. It makes human brains from skin. But setting that aside, what happened to the company was it was an idea 8 years ago, and in those 7 years, progressed to be a public company on the NASDAQ through an acquisition on a company on the public markets. I think, when I look at that journey, there is no way in heck it would have been in that short of time without mentors and allies. And I can point to so many people, my co-founder, who had founded 7 companies previously, but what he was doing was passing the stories and recommendation insights from his mentors that he's had. And then I then did the same for the dozens of mostly 99% UC San Diego alums that we hired for the company. And it was, there's so many people that helped. Our first investor, who happened to be the first general manager of Microsoft, where he learned from Gates. And I think like all these stories that get passed down, it's like they're passing down what's not in the books. I mean, some of it's now being put in books and YouTube's videos and things like that, but not all of it, and you just have to be so grateful that people are willing to be your guide on in my case, in the journey that I had the last 7-8 years, to share their struggles so that I could struggle less. And you just want to pay it forward. And so and from not just this TLC, but the previous leaders conferences, I learned so much, and I applied it to and have kind of an intentionality to drive diversity, to mentor, to give back. And all those people that are still part of the company and have left the company for even better opportunities, take all these experiences with them. So it just keeps spreading and spreading. And yeah, so I think find, as they said yesterday, the panel said yesterday, find more than one mentor for sure. We can talk about maybe how to find them, but yeah, that was the crazy journey that Stemonics and now Viant's been on.
So, Ping, you've raised an important point, and as you started your company, that you got help. And we just, I'm looking at the chat, and Aaron Figueroa has noted there, he says, as an underrepresented student, one of the hardest challenges is knowing when and how to ask for help. Part of being an ally is recognizing when someone needs to speak up, but doing so intrinsically from a place of kindness. And so I'm going to ask you, Kelly and Ping, to think about it from Aaron's point of view. When you needed to ask for help, but didn't quite know how to do it and how you did it, or when you saw someone who needed help, how did you do it? This is a very important point from Aaron.
Yeah, it is.
Should I go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, please go.
Okay. So, in my journey of mentorship, I of course gravitated towards a fellow Triton at work. And she was maybe 5 years younger than me, pretty new to navigating the company and opportunities. And like I said, unfamiliar with, when to find that next role, how to fight for your salary, how to, she had a a lot of people are experiencing this right now, but when people from your team are trickling off, how to guard your own personal life. And we had conversations about, you know, she's very shy, I would say. And, you know, as her mentor, I encouraged her to, you know, guard her personal life. It is not her responsibility to take on the work of others for not being paid more for it. And then not feeling obligated to stay in a role just because, you know, people from her team had left. From, I guess, my position of privilege is what I could describe it as, in understanding how things work and how the company views, you know, the employees. I told her, you need to put yourself first. You need to go ahead and find that next role. You need to do research on what you should be paid. It's time. I told her that, you know, in this company, we move every year, year and a half, 2 years at the max. It's time. You don't feel obligated to stay. And I feel like that was an opportunity for me to speak up in, I guess, a kind way and tell her that, you know, you might not realize this, but this is how it works. And you're in a position to make these moves. And, you know, I am here to back you up in that transition, even though it might be uncomfortable or there's a lot of uncertainty with it. So that's one specific example that I personally had with finding a Triton at work. I always gravitate towards the Tritons and making sure that they understand how to navigate career transitions and movement.
Yes. Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Okay, so find a Triton, you know, take that one home for sure. I still find Tritons. Kim's husband Marcus is essentially one of those Tritons for me, as I'm also, you know, contemplating and going through a transition myself. And I think that you know, that's a key takeaway. Now, to really dive in, really specific for David and the comments that have been put in, I have 2 points. The first is mentors and allies, they recognize when somebody is standing out. Yesterday, there was this comment in the seminar, you know, by Mickey, to work hard and put in the hours. And one reason why I think that works is because those that are successful put in those, you know, more often than not, put in those really long hours and hard work as well. And so people who've walked that same path of putting in the hard work see that in others, even when they're struggling. And so as part of number one, to stand out, if you're not sharing your story, which leads to part two, sharing your struggles, it oddly, when a potential mentor or ally hears that, they will recognize it. I think. And I'm open, this is a panel discussion, but it was just, so I'll give you an example. So in town here, there's another startup that I got asked to serve on the board for, and I'm advising. And what drew me to them, not only are they first-gen immigrants, scientists, but the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to start a company, I recognized that. I saw, oh, they directed their kids' daycare funds to pay for a lab for the last 3 years. I mean, I recognize those kinds of sacrifices the 24, 7, kind of work around the clock, wake up in the middle of the night, wake up early, go to sleep late. I see that, I sense that. And so I'm compelled to help guide them, because I want to remove the same struggles and give guidance so that they don't have the same struggles that I was able to actually avoid because somebody told me how to do it, And so maybe the 2 points are: make sure you stand out. One example is to work hard and those kinds of things. Number 2 is share the story so that potential allies can actually help. If you keep it all in and don't say it or share the struggle, it's difficult for someone maybe to step up. I don't know if there's any, I hope that's on the fly thought, but Kim, Kelly.
And I'm reminded, from our conversations as a board over the past 4 or 5 years, Ping, that one of the real pleasures has been hearing from students. And students have come to speak to us. And, one of the reasons why we're thinking about mentorship is because they've asked about that. They've told us what they need. Building networks is really critical, especially, as I mentioned, for first generation students. The other is basic needs, just meeting basic needs of food, of housing, access to mental health care. These are basic needs. And, to be an ally, I think, means to ask questions, ask and sincerely ask, what do you need? And how can I help you? That's at the heart of equity, that everyone gets what he, she, they need. And if it is more food or transportation or more time, ask that and ask it with kindness. To help the person find what he, she, they may need, and make sure that they get it. Follow through on that. And sometimes, I remember as a young faculty member, I had 2 small children. I had a brand new baby that arrived early. And I had a colleague who chastised me for not showing up on the Friday afternoon talks and happy hour. And I blurted out, I don't have time for that. And then I asked him, why are you holding these things at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? And I was practically in tears. I felt extremely vulnerable, but it was an important question. And it stopped him in his tracks because it was a department of men. I was the first woman in the department. He said, Kim, you're absolutely right. And the department came back, it interrogated itself, it thought very carefully about how it asked, faculty to spend its time. And so I think being very aware of the people in your environment, making sure that he or she, they get what they need, and just paying attention, I think, is the most important thing that you can do. On the other side, and that is, I think, Erin's question and others, how can you speak up and ask for what you need? And it could be something of, often not, you don't have enough time to do your work, or you don't have the work balance, the work-life balance. And I think it's important to be able to begin to understand who are your allies, and then also how you can bring change. I mean, I think maybe that's something we can shift to, Ping and Kelly, is to how can you make change in your environment as an ally, so that the environment is welcoming, inclusive, and meets people's needs.
Go ahead, Kelly.
That question is such a big question, especially in the past 2 years. And I feel like times are changing, because in the past 2 years, there isn't like a work Kelly versus a personal Kelly. It's like your personal life is in the face of work as well. And that's true for students and anyone we work with. And I feel like there is a transition going on with having an understanding that everyone has a personal life and we shouldn't be concerned about speaking up about it and drawing our boundaries. And when you ask the question around how can we, advocate for that balance, especially for me in a workplace, is thinking about the people who, I think it's been described to me as people on the perimeters, like what are their needs that we are not thinking about. Like a specific thing for me is at work when we were being asked to come back into the office, like, why isn't anyone speaking up for working parents who still have children at home? Or when we think about, people who might be balancing multiple jobs, how can we speak up to have more flexibility with the hours that are being worked? Or, people who are taking care of family members or aging parents or anything like that, how can we be more vocal about understanding the needs, or even mental health? How can we allow people to have that vulnerability? And I think it's just a big part of it is just thinking about what is not present, but what is going on at the perimeters that will allow people to be more comfortable with being themselves and sharing some of the personal things that they're experiencing as we're all trying to work and go through life, especially in the past 2 years, like I had mentioned.
I'm going to be mindful of our time because we're now at 12:21 and we want to open it up for questions or comments. But I'm noticing, Maxwell, you, because you're the last in here, in terms of in the chat, you have mentioned, that finding your tribe has helped you find your allies. And I wonder if you might want to just share a little bit about what do you mean by that? How did you find your tribe?
I went into the Peace Corps after my time at UCSD. So that shared experience, kind of what you've all alluded to of being open and speaking about what we need and one's needs. It's been very helpful to look to former volunteers, especially during this time. And then now this just seems like another tribe, this Triton tribe, along with your family members and your friends. And it's about kind of building individual little pods of support.
That's really great of finding people who've had a similar journey that you've had, or who are sensitive to that journey as well. I think it reminds me again of thinking carefully about who you are and what are your strengths, what are your superpowers, and being vocal about that too. Don't keep that joy to yourself. Because if you just say it, somebody's going to hear you and somebody's going to approach you and say, hey, will you be my ally? Or why don't we work on this together? Or I need help. Can you point me to someone who can help me? Questions, comments? I'm monitoring.
I'm actually curious, Kim and Kelly, is there anybody out in the audience that has is struggling or has a struggle to share? Maybe that we've all, I think the lesson is we've all been there. It's okay to share them. And if you don't want to share them in this group, direct message me
Or me.
Kim Kelly. We're here to help. This, and in a sense, we are a Triton tribe right here.
Right. We are your allies.
we are essentially saying we are your allies. Loud, hopefully as clearly as we can. So
Marlene has her hand raised.
all right. Marlene. Hi, Marlene. Good to see you again.
Hi, good to see you all again. I came from a poor Filipino first generation. I'm a first generation Filipino American. So I didn't even think I can go to college because I have 4 brothers. But UCSD found me and gave me money to actually afford this. Hate to tell you this, it was $750 a year tuition back then. But anyway, that was too much money for my families. But wow, to get that experience at UCSD, to meet people from all over the world. My dorm had 8 other women whose parents were corporate leaders and all these rich backgrounds with cars and surfboards. And, I barely had, I had an old typewriter that was, one of those really old typewriters. That's the best thing, technology I had. So I found my tribe. Luckily, there was a core of students, and I was part of founding the Asian American Student Alliance. And that gave me the courage to speak up and expand out and feel like, okay, we're women. We're all 3 women. We tried to get these other guys, but it was hard. But at first it was 3, and now today it's APSA, which is hundreds of students 50 years later. But I want to tell you that it's not easy to get out there as a Filipino woman who has no real connections, because my parents have 8th grade educations. They didn't know what college was. They didn't know what professional development, getting out there and using a degree. So I had to use this mantra. My mantra was rise above the moment. Rejection is going to be at you. It's going to be temporary, but it's an opportunity to grow and truly find your destiny. So from that humble background of my family, I have become a corporate leader, broke the glass ceiling, was the only woman in an all-white Southern corporation in a boardroom. And that's a weird place to be, but I broke through, and then I transferred to become a public school educator because that was really my passion. So I'm saying you got to just believe in yourself and say, okay, I got rejected here. I have had 19 jobs in my life and 11 industries. I have worked in everything. My journey has been long, winding road, but I am so grateful as a 70-year-old Triton that I can share that there is a wonderful world out there, and you, just being a Triton, have one of the best calling cards to make a difference in this world.
Thank you. Marlene, I hope you read the chat. And thank you for your origin story. It's tremendous. Natalie, did you hear that?
I got chills. I
heard it. I heard it.
Marlene, I got chills and tingles.
Yeah.
Yeah, your stories remind me. I remember my parents were like, "What's SAT? What's the SAT thing?" I'm like, yeah. Well, it's it's an amazing story, Marlene.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to share with the last few minutes? If not, we are available. Aaron.
Yes, Aaron.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you everybody for responding to my comment, by the way. That was very beautiful answers. The reason I mentioned that was because I recently graduated from UCSD myself in 2018, sorry. And I did struggle a little bit during my years there. I'm a transfer student. And I learned from talking to other people that I'm not the only one who struggled after transferring. I've just from after graduating too, speaking to other Tritons. Sorry, I'm not a very public speaker. Sorry.
You're doing great.
Thank you. So yeah, I have learned a lot from studying at UCSD from diversity and inclusion, and working in a healthcare organization after graduating. I see how sometimes you have to speak out for the patients themselves. Especially, I live in El Centro. I work at ECRMC. A lot of our patients are underrepresented because of our community, and you just have to know when to say something. That's what I've learned. So that's why I mentioned that earlier. But with my story, after transferring, I did learn that my journey is not the same as everybody else's. So how could I take on from other people and apply that to my story, learn where I have gone through and where do I see myself going? So that's kind of how I dealt with being the mentee. But now that I have graduated from UCSD, I have learned to become the mentor, and I am applying that day to day, being a recent graduate myself.
That is awesome that, Aaron, that you're passing it forward as a mentor, and thank you so much for your authenticity and what you've shared today. It's really moved me. The TLC sessions each year for the last 5 years have been transformative for me, and I hope it's been for all of you. Kim, I know we're the last minute here before we go to the last session. I'll pass it to you for final thoughts.
Yes, thank you. I think I couldn't say it any better. Ping and Aaron's last words were fantastic. Thank you all for joining us in this last session. We are going to move. We've got a performance and an announcement, and so we're going to close this out. But before I do, I want to thank every one of you. Thank you for your time, your talent, your passion for UC San Diego. And we'll continue this conversation. There's certainly a lot more to say about how to be great allies. And we've had some great examples today. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.